The first photo fell out of the vault like a confession. It landed face up on the marble floor between Nora Winslow's blood-stained sneakers and the black leather shoes of the most feared man in Providence. Her own face stared back at her. Not from tonight. Not from this hospital. Not from any memory she had given him permission to keep. The photo showed her standing outside Mercy Vale Medical Center 6 months ago, wrapped in her faded grey coat, rain dripping from her hair, unaware that someone had been watching her from across the street. Nora stopped breathing. Behind her, the vault door stood open inside the hidden room beneath Callum Veyne's penthouse. Steel walls, cold blue security lights, shelves of cash, passports, weapons locked behind glass, hard drives in coded boxes, and hundreds of photographs, all of her. Her walking home after night shift, her buying coffee at 5:12 a.m., her sleeping on a bus with her head against the window, her laughing with a child patient outside the pediatric ward, her crying alone in the hospital chapel, her entering her apartment, her leaving her apartment, her life, stolen frame by frame. Nora slowly turned toward Callum Veyne. He stood in the doorway, one hand pressed against the fresh wound beneath his black shirt, dark blood soaking through his fingers. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the photo as if it had hurt him more than the bullet had. Outside the penthouse windows, thunder rolled over the city. Police sirens screamed somewhere far below. His men were dead or bleeding in the hallway. The elevator had been cut. Someone had just tried to kill them both. But all Nora could hear was the sound of her own heart breaking into something colder. "What is this?" she whispered. Callum didn't answer. The man who could silence a room with a glance, who owned half the docks and terrified judges into forgetting his name, said nothing. Nora picked up the photo with trembling fingers. Then another. Then another. Her hands began to shake harder. "You watched me." His eyes lifted to hers. "Nora, don't say my name like that." He stepped forward, but she stepped back so fast her shoulder hit the vault shelf behind her. His expression changed, just slightly. A flash of pain beneath all that control. "You weren't supposed to find this tonight." A laugh escaped her, sharp and breathless and devastated. "That's what you're sorry for? That I found it?" A gunshot cracked somewhere above them. The lights flickered. Callum's head snapped toward the ceiling. Nora didn't move. She held the photo like evidence against him, like a knife she wished she knew how to use. "You brought me here," she said. "You dragged me out of my hospital in the middle of a lockdown. You told me I was in danger. You told me to trust you. You are in danger." "From who?" Her voice broke. "From them? Or from you?" For the first time since she had met him, Callum Veyne looked afraid. Not afraid of the men breaking into his home. Not afraid of dying. Afraid of her answer. Then the intercom on the vault wall crackled to life. A distorted voice whispered through the speakers. "Found your little nurse, Veyne." Callum went still. Nora froze. The voice laughed softly. "She looks prettier in person than she does in the pictures." Callum's eyes turned black. Not angry. Worse. Empty. He reached behind him, pulled a gun from beneath his jacket, and spoke toward the intercom with terrifying calm. "If you touch her, I will bury your entire bloodline before sunrise." The voice smiled through the static. "You already failed her once." The line cut dead, and in the silence that followed, Nora realized the photographs were not the worst secret in the vault. They were only the beginning. 12 hours earlier, Nora Winslow had been standing beneath the fluorescent lights of Mercy Vale's emergency room, holding pressure on a teenage boy's chest, while alarms screamed above her. Rain hammered the ambulance bay doors. The city outside had drowned in a violent December storm, the kind that turned roads into mirrors and sirens into ghosts. Every trauma room was full. Every nurse was running on caffeine, adrenaline, and the quiet terror of making one mistake too many. "Stay with me," Nora said, her gloved hands slick with blood. "Hey, look at me. What's your name?" The boy gasped. His hoodie was soaked. His fingers clutched something silver against his chest. "Nico," he choked. "Nico, you're at Mercy Vale. I'm Nora. I'm going to help you breathe, okay?" He shook his head violently, eyes wide with panic. "No police," he whispered. "No police. He'll find me." "Who?" Before he could answer, the ambulance bay doors burst open. Every conversation died. 3 black SUVs rolled up outside the glass, their headlights cutting through the rain. Men in dark suits stepped out, silent and synchronized. Not like bodyguards, not like cops. Like a warning. The ER security guard reached for his radio. The tallest man entered first, Callum Veyne. Nora had never seen him in person, but everyone in Providence knew the name even if they pretended not to. Some called him a businessman. Some called him a criminal. Some lowered their voices and called him the last king of the old harbor families. He was 36, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black coat beaded with rain, dark hair swept back, face carved in hard angles and colder shadows. He looked less like a man entering a hospital and more like a verdict. 2 doctors stepped out of his path without being asked. The wounded boy saw him and panicked. "No," Nico rasped. "Please." Callum's eyes moved from the boy to Nora. The room seemed to tighten around that look. Nora had been stared at by drunk patients, grieving husbands, arrogant surgeons, and men who mistook kindness for weakness. This was different. Callum Veyne looked at her, as if he already knew her. As if he had crossed half the city not for the bleeding boy but for the woman keeping him alive. He stopped beside the trauma bed. "Leave us," he said. The attending physician bristled. "This is my ER." Callum didn't look at him. "Not tonight." 2 of Callum's men moved toward the door. Nora lifted her chin. "No one leaves. He's unstable." Callum's eyes returned to her. A nurse beside Nora whispered, "Nora, don't." But Nora kept both hands on Nico's wound. "If you want to intimidate someone, try the billing department. I'm busy." For 1 suspended second, no one breathed. Then Callum stepped closer. He smelled like rain, cold air, and expensive smoke. "What did he say to you?" Nora's pulse hammered. "He said he doesn't want police." "What else?" "That's private medical information." A flicker crossed his mouth. "Not amusement. Recognition, maybe." Nico grabbed Nora's wrist. "He has the pictures," the boy whispered. Nora leaned closer. "Who has the pictures?" Callum's posture changed, just enough for Nora to notice. Nico's eyes darted to him. "Not him," the boy said. "The other one. The man with the white rose." Callum's calm broke for half a second. Then, the overhead lights exploded. Glass rained down from the ceiling. Someone screamed. The ER plunged into red emergency light. Gunfire shattered the ambulance bay windows. Nora threw herself over Nico as bullets tore through monitors and metal carts. Callum moved with terrifying speed, one arm locking around Nora's waist, dragging her and the boy off the exposed trauma bed, seconds before the glass wall behind them collapsed inward. "Stay down," he ordered. "I have a patient. You have a shooter." Another bullet struck the oxygen tank nearby. A nurse screamed as sparks flew. Callum fired twice toward the broken windows without flinching. His men returned fire from the hallway. The ER became chaos alarms, rain, smoke, broken glass, the metallic scent of fear. Nora crawled toward Nico. Callum grabbed her arm. "Don't. He'll bleed out. He'll die faster if you stand up." She ripped her arm free and crawled anyway. Callum cursed under his breath and moved with her, shielding her with his body as she pressed both hands against Nico's chest. "You're insane," Callum growled. "I'm a nurse." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Their faces were inches apart under the red emergency lights. Nora could feel his breath, controlled, steady. Too steady for a man in the middle of a shootout. For 1 impossible second, danger sharpened into something intimate. Then Nico convulsed. "Nico!" Nora shouted. Callum looked at the boy's hand. The silver object had fallen loose. A small flash drive. Callum snatched it, his eyes darkening. The hospital intercom crackled. A calm male voice filled the ER. "Callum Veyne. Send out the nurse, and the boy lives." Nora froze. Every person in the ER turned toward her. Callum slowly lifted his eyes to the ceiling speaker. The voice continued, smooth and almost amused. "You have 3 minutes." Nora stared at Callum. "Why would they ask for me?" Callum didn't answer. "Why would they even know who I am?" His silence was colder than the rain. The hospital went into lockdown within minutes, but lockdown meant nothing when the enemy was already inside. Callum moved Nora and Nico through a service corridor while his men cleared the path ahead. The boy was unconscious, carried between 2 bodyguards on a trauma board. Nora kept one hand on his pulse and the other on the IV bag swinging above him. "Where are you taking us?" she demanded. "Somewhere my enemies can't reach. This is a hospital. I have surgeons here, blood banks, equipment. You also have 4 dead security guards and someone using your PA system." She hated that he was right. They reached a private surgical wing that looked abandoned. Callum's men locked the doors behind them. One of them, a grey-eyed man with a scar through his eyebrow, handed Callum a tablet. "West stairwell compromised," he said. 2 shooters down. 1 escaped. "Find the leak," Callum said. The man hesitated. "Sir?" They knew which trauma bay. Callum's jaw tightened. Nora caught it. "They knew because of you," she said. Callum turned. "What did you do?" "I came to keep him alive." "No. You came because of me." The words landed between them. Callum dismissed his men with a glance, though they remained near the door. He stepped closer to Nora. "You were named," he said quietly. "By who?" "The man hunting that boy." "Why?" Callum's gaze moved over her face with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "Because Nico found something he shouldn't have." "The flash drive?" "Yes." "What's on it?" He looked away. Nora laughed bitterly. "Of course." "Nora, you don't get to use my name like we know each other." His eyes returned to hers. "But I do know you." The room seemed to tilt. Nora stared at him. "What?" Callum's expression shut down instantly, as if he had revealed too much. Before she could demand an explanation, Nico's monitor shrieked. Nora turned back into nurse mode, his pressures dropping. Callum moved beside her. "What do you need?" 2 units. O negative, chest tray, suction, and a doctor who isn't hiding behind a vending machine. Callum looked at his scarred man. "Get everything she asked for." The man hesitated. "The blood bank is sealed." Callum's voice went flat. "Unseal it." Nora glanced at him. "You can't just order hospital staff around. Watch me." 15 minutes later, Nora was elbow-deep in saving a boy who had carried a secret into her ER and put a target on her chest. Callum stayed in the corner of the surgical room, silent as a shadow. He watched everything. Not just the doors, not just the monitors. Here. Nora felt it even when she didn't look up. When the boy finally stabilized, her hands trembled as she stripped off her gloves. Blood had dried along her forearms. Her hair had fallen loose from its clip. Her throat burned from shouting orders. Callum handed her a clean towel. She didn't take it. "Why did that voice ask for me?" His face remained unreadable. "Because someone thinks you have something. I have nothing. You have a memory." Nora frowned. "What memory?" His jaw flexed. "Do you remember a fire on Harbor Row 16 years ago?" The question hit her like cold water. She looked down. Everyone in Providence knew about the Harbor Row fire. A warehouse explosion. 12 dead. A little girl found wandering blocks away in the rain. Nora had been that little girl. She remembered smoke, screaming, a silver door handle burning her palm, her mother's voice telling her to run. Then nothing. Her foster parents had told her trauma protected the brain from what it couldn't survive. Nora swallowed. How do you know about that? Callum's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Because I was there. The room went silent except for Nico's monitor. Nora stared at him. You were a child. I was 17. Why were you there? His face closed again. My father owned the building. The Veyne family warehouse. The old Mafia war. Nora stepped back. My mother died in that fire. I know. Something inside her snapped. You know? You say that like you read it in a file. I didn't read it. Then how? He didn't answer. She moved toward him. Anger rising over fear. How, Callum? His eyes held hers. Because I carried you out. The memory came like a match struck in darkness. A black coat around her shoulders. A teenage boy's voice saying, Don't look back. Blood on his cheek. Smoke behind him. Nora pressed a hand to her mouth. No. Callum didn't move. You were 6 years old, he said. You wouldn't let go of a silver locket. You kept saying your mother was still inside. Nora couldn't breathe. For 16 years, she had imagined a firefighter, a stranger, a faceless rescuer. Not him. Not this man. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because I wasn't supposed to survive that night either. The door burst open before he could say more. The scarred man stepped in. Sir, we have a problem. Callum turned. Say it. The hospital cameras are looping. Nora's blood went cold. All of them? Yes. Whoever's inside is moving blind spots floor by floor. And they're not here for Nico anymore. The man looked at Nora. They're coming for her. Callum did not hesitate. We leave now. Nora grabbed the edge of the surgical bed. I'm not leaving him. Nico will be moved separately. No. Callum stepped into her space. This is not a debate. You don't own me. His eyes flashed. No. But I know what happens when I fail to protect you. The words were so raw they silenced her. For a second, the cold Mafia boss vanished, and she saw the 17-year-old boy from the fire, carrying a terrified child through smoke. Then the lights died again. Complete darkness swallowed the room. A scream echoed down the hall. Callum's hand found Nora's wrist in the dark. Stay behind me. She should have pulled away. She didn't. They moved through the hospital like ghosts. Callum's men formed a tight ring around Nora, but Callum stayed closest. His hand hovered near her back without touching, guiding her through service corridors lit only by red emergency strips and lightning through distant windows. The hospital had become something unfamiliar. The same halls where Nora had spent years saving lives now felt like tunnels beneath a battlefield. At the pharmacy junction, 2 masked men emerged from the stairwell. Callum fired before Nora could scream. One dropped. The other vanished behind a door. Callum pushed Nora into an alcove and covered her body with his chest pressed against hers. His face was inches away. She could feel the tension in him, coiled and lethal, but his hand at the back of her head was careful, almost gentle. Are you hit? He asked. No. His eyes moved over her face anyway, searching for injury. The tenderness of it made her angrier. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I matter to you. His silence answered too loudly. Another shot cracked. Callum flinched. Nora saw his shoulder jerk. Blood spread beneath his coat. You're hit. It's nothing. Of course it is. Men like you only bleed for dramatic effect. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his knees buckled. Nora caught him before he fell fully, her instincts overpowering everything else. Pressure, she snapped, shoving her hand against the wound. Keep pressure. Nora. Shut up. His men turned back, alarmed. Car's 2 floors down, the scarred man said. He won't make it if the bullet clipped an artery, Nora said. Callum stared at her through pain. Always the nurse. Always the idiot who saves people she should probably let die. His mouth curved faintly. You wouldn't let me die. Don't test that theory. They dragged him into an old imaging room. Nora ripped open his shirt beneath the harsh glow of a portable light. The wound was ugly, but not immediately fatal. Still, seeing his blood on her hands did something to her she hated. Callum Veyne should have been a monster. Instead, he was the boy who had carried her out of the fire, the man who had shown up tonight before anyone else knew she was in danger, the man who knew her name as if it had lived in his mouth for years, and maybe the man who had secrets darker than the men hunting them. She pressed gauze against his side. "You said someone thinks I have a memory." His eyes closed briefly. "Yes. What memory?" "The night of the fire, your mother hid something before she died." Nora's hands still. "What?" "A ledger. Names, accounts, proof that would destroy 3 families, 2 judges, and half the city's police command. My mother was a nurse. She was also brave." Nora shook her head. "No. She treated people everyone else refused to touch. Dock workers, girls trafficked through the harbor, men shot in alleys. She kept records. Why would she have Mafia ledgers? Because she was planning to expose the men who owned Harbor Row." Nora stared at him. "And your family?" His face tightened. "My father was one of them." The words hung between them like smoke. Nora backed away. "Your father killed my mother." Callum didn't deny it. "My father ordered the fire. He died before I could make him answer for it." Her breath broke. "And you've known this entire time?" "Yes." "How long have you known who I was?" His eyes opened. "Since the night I carried you out." The door rattled. Callum's scarred man aimed his gun. Nora barely heard it. "Since the night I carried you out. Then why watch me now?" she whispered. "Why come back?" Callum's eyes held hers. "Because the men who helped my father are still alive. And 6 months ago someone found out you were the child who survived." Nora's anger faltered. "They thought I remembered." "They still do." "And do I?" "And do I?" Callum's silence told her everything. The door burst inward. Smoke flooded the room. Callum moved even wounded, pulling Nora behind him as his men fired into the white haze. She hit the floor, ears ringing, heart slamming against her ribs. A gloved hand grabbed her ankle. She kicked, screaming. Callum turned. The man pulling her from beneath the table had a white rose pinned to his black tactical vest. Callum's face changed. He shot the man in the shoulder, grabbed Nora by the waist, and hauled her to her feet. "Run." They ran, down service stairs, through maintenance tunnels beneath the hospital, past pipes sweating condensation and lights flickering like dying stars. Nora's lungs burned. Callum bled through his shirt. At the exit to the underground ambulance route, a black SUV waited in the rain. Nora stopped. "No." Callum turned. "I'm not getting in a car with you." "Nora, you watched me. You knew my mother's killer. You didn't tell me. And now you expect me to climb into your SUV like this is some twisted rescue fantasy." His face was pale, rain streaking through his hair. "I expect you to survive." The simplicity of it struck harder than anger. The hospital alarm wailed behind them. His men shouted. Someone fired from the tunnel entrance. A bullet struck the wall beside Nora's head. Callum grabbed her and shoved her into the SUV. The door slammed. The city blurred through rain. Nora sat rigid in the back seat, while Callum bled beside her, and his men spoke in clipped, coded sentences from the front. She stared straight ahead. "Where are we going?" "My penthouse." "Of course, because nothing says safety like a criminal's home. It has a surgical suite." She looked at him despite herself. "You have a surgical suite in your penthouse?" "I have enemies." "That's not normal. Neither is tonight." The SUV tore through the storm. Providence unfolded around them in dark bridges. Wet brick, neon signs bleeding into puddles. Nora watched police cars speed past in the opposite direction and wondered how many officers were paid to look away. Callum's breathing grew rough. Nora tried not to notice. Failed. "Take off your coat." He looked at her. "If you bleed out beside me, it'll be extremely inconvenient." His eyes warmed almost imperceptibly. He obeyed. She peeled back the fabric and checked the wound again under the SUV's interior light. You need stitches. I've had worse. Do you say that to sound tough? Or because your emotional vocabulary got murdered in childhood? The corner of his mouth twitched. You talk a lot when you're scared. I talk a lot when men kidnap me after shootouts. I didn't kidnap you. You shoved me into a car. I saved you from a bullet. Multitasking isn't consent. His faint amusement faded. You're right. The quiet admission disarmed her. He looked out the window. I am sorry for that. Nora didn't answer. The penthouse rose above the financial district like a blade of glass. The SUV entered through a private underground garage guarded by men who looked more like soldiers than employees. Inside, the building smelled of polished stone, cold rain, and money. Callum refused a stretcher. Nora rolled her eyes. Men would rather die standing than sit down when told. I can walk. You can also collapse dramatically in an elevator, apparently. One of his men coughed to hide a laugh. Callum glanced at him. The man stopped breathing. Nora almost smiled. Almost. The private surgical suite was on the 42nd floor, hidden behind a library wall in Callum's penthouse. Nora worked under bright white lights, with instruments cleaner than half the rooms at Mercy Vale. Callum sat shirtless on the edge of the surgical table while she stitched the wound in his side. His body was scarred. Old bullet marks. Knife wounds. Burn scars across his left shoulder. One long, pale scar near his collarbone looked too old and too familiar. Nora's fingers slowed. From the fire? She asked. Callum looked down. Yes. She stitched in silence for a while. You were 17, she said. Yes. Why did you save me? His gaze settled on her. Because you were crying for your mother. That's it? No. She waited. His voice lowered. Because I watched my father lock the door. Nora's hand stopped completely. Callum's face was carved from restraint, but his eyes had gone somewhere else. Somewhere full of smoke. He knew there were people inside, Callum said. Your mother. 3 workers. A boy from the docks. He ordered the exits chained. I was supposed to stand outside and learn what power looked like. Nora's throat tightened. What did you do? I waited until he turned away. Then I broke the side door and found me. You were under a steel table. Your hands were burned. You wouldn't leave until I promised I'd find your mother. Nora's eyes stung. Did you? His voice became almost inaudible. Yes. The room blurred. Callum looked away first. She was already gone. Nora pressed the suture scissors down with more force than needed. You should have told me. Yes. Why didn't you? He took a slow breath. Because every time I came close, I saw the way you lived. You built something clean from ashes I helped create. You were a kid. I was a Veyne. That doesn't make you guilty. His eyes returned to hers. It made me responsible. The answer landed somewhere deep and painful. Nora tied the last stitch. You said every time you came close. His silence changed. Nora slowly lifted her eyes. How many times, Callum? He looked toward the door. She stepped back. How long have you been watching me? Before he could answer, his scarred man entered. Vault room is secure. Callum's head snapped toward him. The man realized his mistake. Too late. Nora stared at Callum. Vault room? No. But she was already moving. Nora. She pushed through the library before his men could stop her. Anger and fear guided her faster than reason. Behind the second bookshelf was a biometric panel. It opened for Callum's bloodied hand. When he grabbed the edge of the wall to steady himself. Nora don't. But she stepped inside. The vault lights came on, and her world ended in photographs. There were hundreds. No, more than hundreds. Rows of folders labeled by month. Video drives marked with dates. Hospital schedules. Apartment floor plans. Printed images clipped in sequence. Nora at 22, walking out of nursing school. Nora at 24. sitting beside a dying patient. Nora last winter, carrying groceries through snow. Nora asleep on her couch, photographed through her apartment window. Her stomach turned. She backed into the shelf. God. Callum stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, pain and shame warring in his face. I can explain. That sentence has never helped any woman in a locked vault. It wasn't obsession. She laughed, horrified. Look around you. I was protecting you. You were violating me. The words struck him visibly. Good, she thought. Let them. She pulled a folder from the shelf and photos scattered across the floor. Her outside the hospital chapel. Her through a coffee shop window. Her sitting in a laundromat at midnight. This is my life, she said, voice shaking. My private life. My grief. My exhaustion. My home. I know. No, you don't. Because if you knew, you wouldn't have done this. Callum's face looked stripped bare. I had men watching from a distance. Never inside your apartment. She snatched up the photo of her sleeping. Then what is this? His expression changed immediately. He took the photo from her hand. Eyes sharpening. I didn't take this. Nora froze. Callum looked at the angle. The window reflection. The timestamp. His voice dropped. This isn't mine. Before Nora could speak, the vault intercom crackled. The enemy's voice filled the room. Found your little nurse Veyne. And everything inside Callum became lethal. After the voice cut off, Callum turned to his men. Lock down the building. His scarred man nodded. Already initiated. No elevators. No stairwell access. Sweep every floor. Yes, sir. Nora stood among the photographs, unable to move. Callum approached slowly, as if she were the wounded one. Nora, listen to me. I don't know what's real anymore. This photo means he got closer than I knew. She looked up. Who is he? Callum's jaw flexed. Elias Thorne. The name meant nothing to her. White Rose? Yes. Who is he? The last living partner of my father. Nora's blood chilled. The fire. He arranged it. And now, he wants me? He wants what your mother hid. I don't have it. You might. Nora shook her head. I was 6. Your mother gave you something before she died. My locket. Callum's eyes dropped to her throat. Nora instinctively touched the small silver locket she had worn since childhood. Plain. Scratched. The only thing found with her after the fire. Callum's expression told her before he spoke. Open it. My foster mother tried. Jewelers tried. It's sealed. Not sealed, he said. Locked. The room seemed to narrow around her. Callum stepped closer. May I? She almost refused. Then, a blast shook the penthouse. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, glass shattered. Callum caught Nora by the shoulders as the floor trembled beneath them. His men shouted from the hall, breach on 44. Callum's eyes stayed on Nora. We're out of time. Nora pulled the locket from her neck with shaking hands and gave it to him. For a man who dealt in weapons and violence, Callum handled it like it was sacred. He pressed his thumb against the tiny engraved edge. Nothing happened. Then Nora remembered. My mother used to sing something, she whispered. When I was scared, Callum looked at her. What? Nora closed her eyes, searching through years of smoke. A melode, a line, a phrase in Italian, though her mother had not been Italian. Luce sotto la cenere, Nora whispered. Light beneath the ash. The locket clicked. Callum's eyes widened. The silver face opened, revealing not a photo, but a microchip no bigger than a fingernail. For a moment, even the gunfire above them seemed far away. Nora stared at it. My mother hid it on me. She trusted you to survive, Callum said. Nora's eyes filled. She shouldn't have had to. Callum's face tightened. No. A shot rang out beyond the vault. One of Callum's men fell against the doorway. The lights went red. His scarred man appeared, bleeding from the temple. Sir, Thorne's men are inside. Callum closed the locket around the chip and placed it back in Nora's hand. Keep this on you. What's on it? The truth. About my mother? About everyone who killed her. Nora closed her fist around it. And you? He held her gaze. If my name is there, use it. The words cut through her anger. You'd let me destroy you? If that's what justice costs. The vault door began to close as emergency protocol engaged. Callum grabbed Nora's hand and pulled her out seconds before the steel sealed behind them. They moved through the penthouse under siege. The beautiful apartment had become a war zone. Rain blew through shattered windows. White curtains snapped like ghosts. Glass glittered across black marble. Gunfire flashed in the hall beyond the dining room. Nora had never felt more afraid, but what terrified her most was not the violence. It was how Callum kept placing himself between her and every danger without hesitation. At the grand staircase, a man in black appeared above them and aimed at Nora. Callum shoved her behind a marble pillar and took the shot in his shoulder. Nora screamed. He fired back once. The man disappeared. Callum staggered but stayed upright. You're bleeding again, Nora said, panic rising. Later. You cannot keep saying later to blood loss. He turned to her, eyes burning through the dimness. You are alive, so it's later. The line silenced her. His scarred man led them into a private elevator shaft hidden behind a wine room. The elevator car was disabled several floors below. We climb down, he said. Nora looked into the dark shaft. You're joking. Callum stepped onto the emergency ladder. I don't joke while bleeding. That's actually the perfect time to joke. He looked at her, and despite everything, blood, betrayal, fear, something passed between them that felt dangerously like warmth. Then the penthouse door exploded. They climbed, down through darkness. Rainwater leaked through cracked glass above. Sirens rose outside. Nora's hand slipped on the metal rungs, but Callum stayed beneath her despite his wounds, one arm ready to catch her if she fell. Halfway down, the emergency lights flickered and died. Nora froze. I can't see. Callum's voice rose from below, steady and close. I'm here. The words moved through her body before she could stop them. I'm here. Not soft. Not romantic. Something more dangerous. Reliable. She hated that she believed him. They reached the underground garage to find 3 of Callum's men dead, 2 SUVs burning, and Elias Thorne waiting beside a silver car as if he had been invited. He was older than Callum, elegant in a white coat untouched by rain. A white rose sat in his lapel. His grey hair was combed back, his smile polite. Nora knew him instantly without memory. Some evil did not need recognition. It announced itself in the air. Nora Winslow, he said warmly. Your mother's eyes. Callum stepped in front of her. Elias smiled. Still playing protector, Callum? How touching. Your father would be humiliated. Callum's gun lifted. Elias didn't flinch. If I die, the file goes public in pieces. Edited pieces. Enough to ruin the girl. Enough to make her mother look like the traitor. Enough to turn every corrupt badge in this city toward her. Nora's fingers closed around the locket. What do you want? Elias looked past Callum. There she is. Braver than he deserves. Callum's voice was ice. Speak to me. I'm tired of speaking to sons. They disappoint. I want the chip. No. Nora stepped around Callum. His hand caught her wrist. She looked at him. For once he didn't command. He pleaded without words. Nora face d'Elias. My mother died to hide it from you. Your mother died because she mistook goodness for strategy. Nora's fear hardened. No. She died because men like you confuse cruelty with power. Elias's smile faded slightly. Callum's eyes flicked to her. Something like pride and terror mixed together. Elias raised his hand. From the shadows, a man emerged holding a phone. On the screen was Nico, alive. bound to a chair somewhere dark, his face bruised, eyes terrified. Nora gasped. Elias said, "The boy gave you the path. Now he pays for it." Callum's scarred man swore under his breath. Elias continued, "The chip, Miss Winslow, or the child dies." Nora looked at Callum. He shook his head once. Not because Nico didn't matter. Because surrendering the chip would not save anyone. Nora understood, and hated that she understood. She looked back at Elias. "Fine." Callum's hand tightened. "Nora." She pulled the locket from her neck. Elias's eyes gleamed. She stepped forward. Callum moved with her. "No," she whispered. "Trust me." The words stunned them both. Callum let go. Nora walked toward Elias with the locket in her open palm. Every step felt like walking back into the fire that had taken her mother. When she reached him, Elias extended his hand. Nora dropped the locket. He looked down instinctively. Callum moved. So did Nora. She drove her knee into Elias's wrist as Callum fired into the lights above the garage. Darkness and sparks exploded. Callum's men surged from the service entrance where they had been waiting for his signal. Nora dove behind a concrete barrier. Gunfire erupted. Elias screamed orders. Callum fought like a storm, wounded and relentless, dragging Nora behind a pillar when bullets sparked near her feet. "You said trust you," he growled. "I did. You almost gave me a heart attack. You got shot twice. Don't be dramatic." His breath caught, and for one wild second he laughed. A real laugh. Then Elias's car engine roared. "He's leaving!" Nora shouted. Callum grabbed her hand and ran. They chased Elias through the garage as his car slammed through the gate into the rain-soaked street. Callum shoved Nora into the remaining SUV and climbed in after her. "Track him," he ordered. His scarred man drove like death, had offended him personally. They tore through Providence under black skies. The city blurred in neon and rain. Callum sat beside Nora, one hand pressed to his shoulder, the other gripping his phone as his men triangulated Elias's route. Nora held the locket. The chip was still inside. Callum noticed. "You kept it. I palmed it when I dropped the locket." He stared at her. "What?" "I work 12-hour shifts in an ER. You think I don't know sleight of hand? Try hiding medicine from a drunk man with a head injury." Despite the blood and danger, Callum looked at her like she had just rewritten his world. "You are impossible. You're welcome." Then his face changed. "What?" He turned his phone toward her. A map. A blinking dot moving toward the old Harbor Row district. Nora's stomach twisted. "The warehouse," she whispered. Elias was taking Nico to the place where it had all begun. The old Harbor Row warehouse stood at the edge of the water, a burned-out skeleton rebuilt into luxury storage by men who liked burying history beneath renovated brick. Tonight, the building glowed with emergency work lights and rain. Shipping containers lined the yard. The river beyond was black and restless. Callum's men surrounded the perimeter. Nora refused to stay in the SUV. "No." Callum turned. "We are not doing this again. He's there because of me. He's there because of Thorn. Nico is a child, and you are the target. Then use me." Callum's expression became furious. "Never." The force of the word shook her. Nora stepped closer. "You've been making choices for me since I was 6. Pain crossed his face. "You're right. Then stop now." He looked toward the warehouse, then back at her. Rain ran down his face. Blood darkened his shirt. He looked powerful and ruined and more human than any monster had the right to be. "If you go in there," he said, "you stay behind me. No promises. Nora, I'm serious. If I see Nico, I move." His jaw flexed. "Fine. Fine? Fine." She blinked. "That was easier than expected. I'm learning." It should not have made her chest ache. Inside the warehouse, the air smelled of rust, river water, and ghosts. Nora's memories stirred with every step. Metal stairs, A red door, smoke rolling under beams, her mother's hand pushing the locket into her palm. Light beneath the ash. Nora stopped. Callum turned immediately. What? She stared at a scorched support column left exposed behind renovated glass. I remember this. His expression sharpened. What do you remember? My mother wasn't alone. Callum moved closer. Nora closed her eyes. A woman crying. A man saying, "The child saw." Her mother answering, "Then she'll remember when it matters." Nora opened her eyes. There was another man. Not Elias. Someone younger. Callum went still. What did he look like? I don't know. A ring. Gold. Black stone. Callum's face hardened. His scarred man whispered, "Sir?" Callum looked sick. Nora's stomach dropped. "You know who it is." Before he could answer, lights flooded the warehouse. Elias stood on the upper platform, with Nico bound beside him, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Callum's scarred man, the one who had protected them all night, the one who had driven the SUV, the one Callum trusted. His gun was pressed against Nico's head. Nora's breath stopped. Callum's face turned to stone. "Malric." The scarred man smiled sadly. "Boss." Elias clapped once. Delighted. Family betrayal. Always more elegant when it's quiet. Callum's gun rose. Malric pressed his gun harder against Nico. "Don't." Nora stared at Malric. "You helped him?" Malric looked at her, and for the first time, guilt flickered. "I helped the city survive Callum's war." Callum's voice was deadly calm. "You gave him her apartment photos?" Malric's silence answered. Nora felt ice crawl through her. Callum took one step forward. Malric's hand tightened. "Stop." Callum stopped. The obedience cost him. Elias smiled down at Nora. "The chip, Miss Winslow. This has gone on long enough." Nora looked at Nico. The boy's eyes pleaded with her. Then she looked at Callum. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes told her everything. Not the chip. Not for any cost. Because the chip was the only way to end what had killed her mother. Nora reached for her locket. Callum's gaze sharpened. She removed it slowly. "Nora," he said quietly. She looked at him, and in that look, she hoped he understood. She was not surrendering. She was choosing. She stepped into the light. "My mother died here," she said, voice echoing through the warehouse. "You burned her alive because she kept records of your crimes." Elias's smile thinned. "You know very little." "I know enough." She held up the locket. "You want this?" Elias leaned forward. "Yes." "Then tell me who wore the black stone ring." For the first time, Elias's expression broke. Callum turned slowly toward Malric. Malric went pale. Nora understood. "No," she whispered. Callum's voice was barely human. "Malric." Malric's gun trembled. "I was there," he said. "I was 16. My father sent me with Thorn. I didn't light the fire." "But you saw my mother," Nora said. He closed his eyes. "She gave you the locket. She told you to run. Thorn told me to stop you." Callum's face had lost all color. Malric looked at him. "You broke the door before I could. You saved her. And I spent 16 years waiting for that night to catch us." Callum lifted his gun. "You stood beside me. I stood beside you because I owed you. You sold her. I tried to keep Thorn from killing her." Nora's voice cut through them. "Then prove it." Everyone turned. She looked at Malric. "Let Nico go." Malric's face twisted. Elias snapped. "Do not be sentimental." Nora stepped closer to the platform. "You say you didn't light the fire. You say you owe him. You say you tried to protect me. Then choose now." Malric looked at Callum. Callum's gun remained raised, but his eyes were devastated. For all his coldness, betrayal hurt him. Nora saw it, because Callum trusted almost no one, and the one man he did had sold the woman Callum had spent half his life trying to keep alive. Malric slowly lowered the gun from Nico's head. Elias shot him. Nora screamed. Malric fell against the railing, blood spreading across his shirt. Callum fired, but Elias dragged Nico backward into the upper office. Chaos erupted. Callum ran for the stairs. Nora ran with him. This time, he didn't tell her to stop. The upper office was half glass, overlooking the river. Elias held Nico near the broken window, a gun in one hand, the other gripping the boy's collar. Callum entered first, gun aimed. Nora slipped in behind him. Elias was no longer smiling. "You think this ends with truth?" he snarled. "Truth is only useful when powerful men allow it to matter." Nora held up the chip. "Then we won't ask permission." Elias laughed. "You're your mother's daughter." "Yes." She slid the chip into a small emergency transmitter Callum had given her in the SUV. One button. One upload. It connected to Callum's encrypted network, and if his promise was real, every journalist, prosecutor, and federal contact he had kept alive for this moment. Elias's eyes widened. "Don't." Nora looked at Callum. He nodded once. She pressed send. The office seemed to hold its breath. Then the device blinked green. Uploaded. Elias's face twisted with rage. He shoved Nico toward the broken glass. Nora lunged. Callum fired. The bullet struck Elias's hand as Nora grabbed Nico's jacket and pulled him backward. Callum slammed into Elias, both men crashing through the side table. Nico fell into Nora's arms, sobbing. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you." Callum and Elias fought near the shattered window, rain whipping in from the river. Callum was wounded, slower than he should have been, but rage carried him. Elias grabbed a shard of glass and drove it toward Callum's throat. Nora picked up a fallen metal lamp and struck Elias across the shoulder with everything she had. He staggered. Callum caught him by the coat and slammed him against the window frame. Below, police sirens approached. Real police this time. Federal vans. News helicopters. The city waking up. Elias looked from the sirens to Callum and smiled bitterly. "You chose her over the Empire." Callum's eyes moved to Nora. "No," he said. "I chose what I should have chosen 16 years ago." Elias tried to raise his gun. Callum knocked it away and drove him to the floor. By the time the federal agents stormed the warehouse, Elias Thorne was on his knees. Nora was holding Nico against her chest, and Callum Veyne stood between them and everyone else, bleeding beneath the white light. 3 weeks later, Providence learned how much rot could hide beneath beautiful buildings. Judges resigned. Police commanders vanished. Harbor families turned on each other. Elias Thorne's confession never came, but the files did enough screaming for him. Nora's mother became a name again, not a victim in an old warehouse tragedy. A whistleblower, a nurse who had risked everything to expose monsters, a woman who had trusted her daughter to carry truth through fire. Nora stood at the reopening memorial on Harbor Row, beneath a sky washed clean by winter sun. A brass plaque bore her mother's name, Lillian Winslow, nurse, witness, protector. Nora touched the letters with trembling fingers. Behind her, the crowd murmured. Reporters waited at a distance. Federal agents watched the exits. Callum stood across the street in a black coat, not approaching. He had not come near her in 3 weeks. Not since the warehouse. Not since she told him she needed space, and he had bowed his head like the words were a sentence he deserved. He had sent nothing. No flowers. No calls. No men outside her apartment. At least none she could see. That mattered. And it hurt in a way she did not want to name. After the memorial, Nora found an envelope tucked beneath her windshield wiper. No name. Inside was a key, and a note written in precise black ink. "The vault is yours now. Everything I took from your life is inside. Destroy it. Keep it. Use it against me. Your choice." For the first time, Say. Nora stared at the note for a long time. Then she drove to his penthouse. Callum was in the vault when she arrived, not waiting like he expected her. Working. Every photo had been removed from the shelves and placed into sealed archive boxes. Every drive labeled. Every report organized. The vault looked less like a shrine and more like evidence waiting for judgment. He turned. When she entered, he looked thinner. Still imposing, still dangerous, but tired in a way power could not hide. Nora, her name in his mouth, no longer sounded like possession. It sounded like restraint. She stepped inside. Did you keep copies? No. Can you prove that? Yes. Will you? Yes. She walked past him to the boxes. There she was. Years of her life. Stolen. Protected. Violated. Saved. All of it true at once. She touched one photo on top. Mercy Vale Ambulance Bay. Her turning toward the rain. She remembered that day. She had just lost a patient and cried in the supply closet for 6 minutes before returning to work. You saw too much, she said. Callum's voice was low. Yes, you should have come to me. I know. You should have trusted me with my own life. His jaw tightened. Yes. She looked at him. Why didn't you? His eyes held hers. Because everyone I ever trusted became a weapon against me. And because when it came to you, fear made me selfish. The honesty hurt more than excuses would have. Nora swallowed. Were you obsessed with me? He did not look away. Yes. Her breath caught. But not in the way you deserve to be loved, he said. Not freely. Not openly. Not with your consent. I confused watching over you with protecting you, because it allowed me to stay close without risking your hatred. And now I would rather have your hatred than your captivity. The vault was silent. Nora felt tears rise, but refused to let them fall. I did hate you. I know. I still might. I know. She looked down at the photos. But when Elias took Nico, when Malric betrayed you, when everything fell apart, you let me choose. His eyes softened. You asked me to. That shouldn't be revolutionary. No, he said. It should be basic. A sad smile touched her mouth. You've been reading therapy books? His expression remained serious. Yes. Nora blinked. Then, despite herself, she laughed. A small, broken laugh, but real. Callum looked at her like that sound had given him back something he did not deserve. She took a breath. I'm not here to forgive you. I didn't expect you to. I'm here because my mother's files included something else. Callum went still. What? Nora opened her bag and removed a folded paper. Old, smoke-stained, found inside the decoded archive. She handed it to him. Callum unfolded it carefully. His face changed as he read. Nora knew what it said. Callum, if you find my daughter, do not spend your life paying for your father's sins. Protect her, if you can. Tell her the truth if you're brave enough. Then let her decide who you are. Lillian. Callum's hand trembled. Only once. But Nora saw it. He closed his eyes. For the first time she saw him not as the Mafia boss, not as the dangerous man, not as the shadow in her life, but as the 17-year-old boy covered in smoke, carrying a child away from a fire his own blood had started. He had been guilty. He had been responsible. He had been wrong. And he had also been trying, in the only broken language he knew, to keep one promise alive. Nora stepped closer. Callum. He opened his eyes. I don't know what this becomes, she said. I'm not asking for anything. I know. That's why I came. His breath stilled. She looked around the vault. I want the photos destroyed. All except the ones connected to evidence. Done. I want the apartment across from mine sold. His face tightened with shame. Already done. I want no guards unless I ask. Yes. And I want you to understand something. He waited. If I stay in your life in any way, It won't be because you saved me. It won't be because you watched me. It won't be because danger forced us together." Her voice softened. "It will be because I choose to walk in with my eyes open." Callum looked at her like she had just placed a loaded gun in his hands, and trusted him not to fire. "I don't know how to be harmless," he said. "I'm not asking you to be harmless." She stepped close enough to see the scar near his collarbone. "I'm asking you to be honest." His eyes dropped to her mouth, then returned immediately to her eyes. Controlled. Careful. Always. Nora believed him. Not completely. Not blindly, but enough for one breath. Enough for one beginning. 6 months later, Mercy Vale opened a new crisis wing funded anonymously through a legal trust that irritated every journalist in Providence because they could not connect it cleanly to Callum Veyne. Nora knew, of course. She let it happen because the wing saved lives. She still worked nights. She still drank terrible vending machine coffee. She still woke sometimes from dreams of smoke. But now, when she woke, she remembered the whole truth. Her mother's hands, the locket, the teenage boy breaking open the chain door, and the choice that came after survival. Callum never appeared at the hospital uninvited. But sometimes, after brutal shifts, Nora would step outside and find a black car waiting across the street. No guards approaching. No orders. Just the option. Some nights she ignored it. Some nights she walked home alone under streetlights, reclaiming every step. And some nights, when the rain was heavy and the city felt too full of ghosts, she opened the passenger door and got in. Callum would be there, silent, reading reports or staring out at the wet city. He never asked about patients unless she spoke first. He never touched her unless she reached for him. He learned restraint the way other men learned violence, slowly, painfully, with discipline. One night in early spring, after losing a little girl in the ICU, Nora climbed into the car and said nothing. Callum took one look at her face and told the driver. The bridge. They drove to the old harbor bridge, where the river cut black beneath the city lights. Callum stepped out first, opened her door, then moved away to give her space. Nora stood in the wind, arms wrapped around herself. She was 7, Nora said. Callum stayed beside her. Not too close. "I'm sorry. I hate when people say that. I know. But there's nothing else to say." "No?" She looked at him then. The city lights reflected in his dark eyes. He looked dangerous still. He always would. But the danger no longer felt aimed at her. "I'm tired," she whispered. Callum removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. This time, she let him. His hands lingered only long enough to make sure the coat stayed. Then he stepped back. That restraint broke her more than touch would have. Nora reached for his hand. He went completely still. She threaded her fingers through his. Not because she had forgotten. Not because all wounds had healed. But because healing, she had learned, was not the same as erasing fire. Sometimes healing was standing in the aftermath with someone who knew exactly where the burns were and chose not to touch them until invited. Callum looked down at their joined hands. His voice was rough. "Nora, don't ruin it with a speech." His mouth curved faintly. No speech. They stood there while the rain began again, soft at first, then harder, washing the bridge and the river and the city that had tried to bury too many secrets. Months later, people would say Callum Veyne changed after the Thorn case. They would say he became quieter, less visible, more dangerous to corrupt men, and less interested in empire. They would say a nurse had softened him. Nora hated that version. She had not softened him. She had made him accountable. And somehow, in the strange, dangerous space between truth and forgiveness, he had made her feel less alone with the fire. On the first anniversary of Elias Thorne's arrest, Nora returned to the vault one final time. It no longer held photos of her, no surveillance files, no stolen pieces of her life. Instead, it held evidence against men who thought power meant never answering for what they did. Callum stood beside her as she placed her mother's locket in a small glass case, not as a relic of fear, but as proof. Light beneath the ash. Nora closed the case. Callum watched her. "Are you ready?" he asked. She looked at the vault one last time. The room where she had discovered his worst secret. The room where she had almost hated him forever. The room that had become something else because she had demanded it. "Yes," she said. Callum shut the lights off. Together, they stepped out. The vault door closed behind them with a soft, final sound, not hiding the truth this time, guarding it. Outside, Providence glittered beneath clear night sky. No rain, no sirens, just city lights and the faint hum of traffic far below. Nora walked to the window. Callum stayed behind her, close but not trapping her. She could see Mercy Vale in the distance, its new wing glowing white against the dark. She touched the glass. My mother would have liked that. The hospital, the fact that something good came from all this. Callum's reflection appeared beside hers. "She would have liked you," Nora said. His expression shifted, vulnerable before he could stop it. "No," he said quietly. "She would have demanded better from me." Nora smiled softly. "Exactly." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Callum said, "I loved you before I knew how to do it without harm." Nora closed her eyes. The words entered her carefully, not as a chain, not as a claim, but as a truth finally spoken without excuse. She turned to face him. "And now?" His khaza held hers. "Now I'm learning to love you in a way that leaves you free." Nora studied him. The feared man, the broken boy, the protector, the trespasser, the man who had watched her from shadows and then learned painfully to stand in the light. She reached up and touched the scar at his collarbone. He stopped breathing. "I'm still free?" she whispered. "Always? Even if I walk away?" His jaw tightened, but he answered, "Especially then." Nora nodded. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not desperate, not cinematic in the way stolen kisses often were. No gunfire, no blood, no locked doors, no enemies forcing truth from their mouths. It was quieter than that, stronger, a choice made in a room with open exits. Callum's hands did not grab her. They hovered first, waiting until she stepped closer. Only then did he hold her, carefully, like a man touching something sacred after years of breaking everything he reached for. Outside, the city kept breathing. Inside, Nora finally felt the fire loosen its grip. Not disappear, never disappear, but become part of a story she owned. And when she pulled back, Callum rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, as if Mercy itself had become a woman in blue scrubs who once found hundreds of photos in his vault and still made him earn the right to stand beside her. Nora looked out over Providence, at the hospital lights, the river, the rebuilt harbor, the city that had taken her mother and given her truth. Then she took Callum's hand, opened the penthouse door, and walked out with him into the bright corridor. No shadows, no secrets, no one watching from the dark, only two people carrying scars, stepping into the light by choice.